Hi, I'm David J. Knight, Director of Exhibitions and Collections at Northern Kentucky University School of the Arts. Today you'll be watching 3 of our 9 spring BFA Visual Arts graduates give talk about the artwork in their BFA senior exhibits. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused many things to be done in new ways. Normally, these 9 BFA seniors would have an on-location senior exhibition in the NKU Art Galleries and give their talks in the galleries with lots of family, friends, and supporters. Since this is not possible this semester, their exhibitions will be held virtually. A video of all their artwork will follow at a later date. The seniors have worked very hard this semester with all the quick changes to adapt to a new way for all to experience their artwork. For some, it was not easy as others to do. I commend them for doing the best that they could do with the challenges put forth to them. Please enjoy their talks as they tell a bit more about their artwork and what it is all about. Thank you for watching.
Hello, my name is Asad and I'm working towards my BFA in Integrated Media with a focus in ceramics. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about my thesis show. So my work is centered around Day of the Dead, specifically the marigold flower and its origin story. As the story goes, there was once a woman whose husband went off to war. He ended up dying in battle, leaving her on her own. She agonized in pain for weeks until she couldn't handle the heartbreak anymore. She begged the gods to take her with him, and they were so moved by her passion that they turned her into a marigold. Originally, I was going to have 3 figures in my show. Each were going to be an animal-human hybrid of sorts, with each animal representing a national animal of Mexico. My first sculpture was a Xolo dog, or the Mexican hairless dog, that would represent the gods in the story. The second would be a jaguar, which would represent the woman, and the third would be an eagle, representing her husband. Because of our current situation, I was only able to finish the first sculpture, the Xolo dog, and I set her up in a little altar of sorts, accompanied with marigolds and candles, a picture of my grandmother, and other Day of the Dead themed things. I also made little skulls out of fondant, kind of like sugar skulls, to add to the mix. Along with that piece, I also have 2 banners. They are 3 foot by 8 foot mixed media on canvas with skulls, flowers, and other themes of Day of the Dead. To me, the marigold is the most important component to Day of the Dead. As tradition has it, we lay down the marigolds that leads to our altars so that we create a path for our dead loved ones to come and find us on that day. The marigold flower has been used in Mexican culture and art for hundreds of years. It represents passion, creativity, grief, jealousy, bravery, and courage. All the things I believe we've all gone through at some point in our lives. Growing up as a Mexican American, the value of heritage has been instilled in me for a very long time. Family is very important to me as we are there for each other through everything. To me, I am very lucky to have this sense of community around me. And I think Day of the Dead is a good representation of that as it unites the Mexican community. Not only do we spend the day with our loved ones, but with the ones that we have lost as well. On this day, I truly believe that we are stronger together, as the marigold is not just its origin story anymore, and I think my community proudly represents that. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you enjoy my show.
Hello everyone, my name is Zack Hargrove. I am a BFA student in New Media Art at Northern Kentucky University. I mainly work in sculpture, 3D, and 2D digital art, as well as a little bit of robotic art on the side. So my exhibition piece was originally going to be an interactive animatronic sculpture of a character I've developed over several years. But I ended up having to temporarily change how my piece was shown, and I'll get into that a bit later. So to give some information on this character, in this character's fictional world, he was an entrepreneur in technology and robotics, and a self-proclaimed tech industry titan. who developed a machine called the Zygon Mark IV that could extend lifespan and protect against viruses and disease. This character's name is Aldo Spruce, or Mr. Spruce. Aldo is a name meaning old and wise, and Spruce originally came from the nickname for Howard Hughes's giant plane, the Spruce Goose. This character started out as a simple puppet in my Sculpture 1 class from a few years ago, and slowly evolved into what he is now. Some of my first concepts for this character were literally drawn on napkins while I was working at a warehouse in Kings Island. But back when Spruce was a puppet, he was basically a regular human, except he had a heart transplant machine permanently installed on his chest to keep him alive longer. Over time, he became much more machine than man, to the point where his only human characteristics left were his head, spine, and vital organs. Basically, whatever was necessary to keep him alive. As I was making this character, I also made several supporting pieces on the side to provide more context, or to provide a glimpse into his alternate universe that he inhabits. And these were posters, magazine articles, short animations, and short videos. My piece was originally very dependent on our previously planned gallery space. It was meant to be a grand reveal of this character's product, the Zygon Mark IV. And this animatronic was originally going to be a demonstration model of the machine, not the actual character, but made in the character's image, posing as a sort of mascot for the company and the product. My idea was to bridge two worlds together, Mr. Spruce's fictional alternate universe and our own world. My intention was to make it seem like this character and his company exist in our reality. And this character was heavily inspired by billionaire film and aviation tycoon Howard Hughes, as well as political issues such as wealth inequality and the healthcare crisis. I was also heavily inspired by the Fallout and BioShock video games, and retrofuturism, transhumanism, and sci-fi themes for the overall design of this character and his machinery. One thing that was really important to me during the conceptualization and design process of this character and the machine was the idea of offsetting a massive positive, such as immortality, with a massive negative, such as losing your human body and losing most human qualities. I also made sure to make the Zygon non-humanoid in appearance to drive home this idea of a loss of humanity and human qualities as we delve deeper into the merging of technology and our bodies. I designed the character's machine around several key features, such as the inorganic cylindrical metal body, a single arm instead of two, and 4 wheels in place of legs. But his arm also has several features that a human arm doesn't have, so it's telescopic, so it can extend out really far, and each of the 4 fingers has a little tiny hand capable of individually grasping things per finger. So because of COVID-19 and the shutdown of our studio and gallery, I felt it was crucial to find some way to adapt to our changing circumstances. And with this sudden change of circumstances, this demonstration model of the character and his product had to become the actual character without any of the originally planned animatronic aspects. In the future, when we have the physical gallery, he will be an animatronic though. So after our studio closed, I had to move my piece to my mom's living room. This was the only space I had available. but I realized that this new setting may be a blessing in disguise. After realizing that there's a fireplace right next to where I was storing my piece. So because of the fireplace, I decided to make a fireside chat / commercial hybrid video of my piece, where the character, Spruce, addresses the nation through a sort of TV advertisement. I wanted this video to act as commentary on the often absurd and predatory nature of megacorporations and the health insurance industry. And even though this wasn't what I had originally intended for my project, I think it still encapsulates the essence of my original idea, while also being relevant to our current circumstances. So I thought it was fitting to go with this video idea, given that Mr. Spruce, as a character, is eager to capitalize on dire situations like ours for personal gain. And this can be seen near the end of the video, where there is a pricing screen showing the economic payment plan that is available for lower income individuals, further pushing this idea of predatory corporations capitalizing on the pain and anxiety of consumers. It's important to note that his company deliberately targets lower income individuals. So my video piece is meant to be topical to both our situation, but also the fictional alternate history version of the US that Mr. Spruce inhabits. In his fictional world, the US is also facing a pandemic, but this one is wiping out the population by the millions, with gangrenous-like side effects. I made sure not to mention COVID-19 specifically, so that this commercial could also exist in his universe, sort of going back to that idea of bridging two worlds together. And just to bring this to a close, I want to show some of my older in-progress pictures of the piece, sort of to showcase the found object aspect of the sculpture and how it developed over time. I want to give a big thanks to my dad, as well as Professors Stephen Fink and Brad McCombs, for their expertise and help throughout this process, as well as my friend Dylan Reisinger, who is the voice of Mr. Spruce. Thank you all for listening.
My name is Jennifer Gardner, and I'm going to talk to you about my capstone project, Antithesis of a Thesis. And I'm going to rip this band-aid off right now. It is not the capstone project that I worked on all semester. It is actually an entirely new project that I started on April 2nd, and it culminated on April 22nd when I set it on fire. So this new work was actually based on the old work, which would have been titled Heraith. It was a site-based installation, and conceptually it dealt with grief and cyclical grieving and chronic illness. And I just couldn't continue the work without a metal shop, a wood shop, or the safety precautions that we have at the studio. So I wasn't happy about it, of course, but I realized that I had two options. I could stay mad about it and scream into the void, or I could view this as an opportunity to create art under unusual circumstances with restraints on my time and my materials and the equipment that I would ordinarily use. And ultimately, I decided to do both, to make art and stay mad, because I'm really bad at letting things go. And what I did was cannibalize the materials that I had left. And when I started making, I did my best not to think about what I was making, because I was honestly heartbroken that I couldn't make the work that I had wanted to make. And so I just didn't think about it. And I took all these little cube forms that I had cut right before I left school, the day that I packed up my studio, and I burnt them like I did the original work. And then I just started stacking them, and I viewed it as a meditative process. And the process I actually enjoyed, but the product I hated. I could not stand looking at this piece. It was a giant monument to mediocrity, and I didn't want it in my basement, and I didn't want it in my life, and I didn't want my name attached to it. And so eventually I arrived at the conclusion that I would burn it, because it is part of the cycle of grieving. And for me, grief is, it's rage, and it's self-destructive, and grief presents in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people, but for me that's what it is. And so it only seemed fitting that it would end kind of the way that it began, and so I burnt it. So this is that monument to mediocrity that I was talking about. It is an altar of sorts. I don't know how else to describe it. That form on top is a memento mori, and what that is, if you're not familiar with the term, is a reminder of your mortality. And in there you have fruit that will rot, flowers that are dead, and what used to be my favorite watch, which is a marker of time. So as you see, I set this piece on fire, and actually in its destruction, it was more meaningful to me than it was in its existence, and thus the performance part of the piece came about because I noticed that as I was watching this burn, it was creating unusual shapes, and it was making something really beautiful out of something that I found completely devoid of beauty before. And in the end, although I hated this piece while I made it and I couldn't stand looking at it, I ended up loving the process throughout the whole thing and loving the final product once the final product was gone. So, antithesis of a thesis is not a traditional thesis in that it wasn't well planned out. It was not what I had been preparing all semester. It was off the cuff, and it was a response to real life as it was happening. And in the end, I think that maybe for me personally, that made it more meaningful, as it was still a response to grief and an exploration and allowing grief to exist and acknowledging it as a cycle. And that's all I have to say about that. So here are the last couple images. So briefly, I just want to give a huge shout out to SOTA faculty and staff. You guys are outstanding all the time, but especially in the last couple weeks. Much love to my friends and family who have supported me, and especially my partner, without whom I would have gone insane roughly 5 weeks ago. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy our digital gallery.